I mean, I'm the original cannon fodder, and while I'm running at those cannons, I'm thinking about like deer and turkeys and clean water and tumbling waterfalls, you know?
Recovery, and we've done a ton of recovery. Recovery happens slow and destruction happens fast.
Correct. Right.
So it's easy to get brought down. It's easy to be made depressed because like destruction come about so quickly.
I really honestly believe deeply in bringing a fresh eye to a thing and loving it, and without worrying about what the baseline was. Or like Aldo Leopold said, to have an ecological awareness is to live in a world of wounds.
Now, Wisconsin will kill 50,000 turkeys in the spring, man. And they had none.
This is Hal Herring. I'm here with Backcountry Hunters and Anglers podcast. We're up in Duluth, Minnesota, doing the Outdoor Writers Association stuff. I got Steve Rinella with me. And Steve, about 100 years ago, I read a piece of Steve's in Outside magazine called Getting Jiggy with It.
Oh.
About squid fishing in Seattle. And,
No. That was squid fishing in, what am I saying? Yeah.
Yeah.
The same place I live now.
You bet. And
I was confusing that with something different I wrote.
I had to go look him up after reading that one because it was a super funny story, and it just was written in a way that I don't see in Outside magazine or anywhere else often. So I knew I was in the presence of talent.
I want to point out that at Outside you don't get to name your own stories.
Right. I never get to name mine either.
I was like, dude, you can't call my story Getting Jiggy.
And all this time I thought you picked it.
No, but I've been, I'm still friends with the editor there, and when I was getting out of graduate school, she bought my first magazine story, and it was more money than I'd ever thought. I thought if you added up all the money I'd ever earn the rest of my life, that would be
better.
More than
yeah.
more than that. Yeah, we're still friendly, man. So I went on to do a lot of stories there. They let me do a lot of fun stuff when I was writing there.
Yeah, I've read some good. That cattle rustling story was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That was one I really picked up on. I loved that.
Yeah, there was a handful of years where I did a lot of writing there.
What led you to that story on the squid fishing?
Oh, I just thought it'd be interesting. My buddy that I grew up with in Michigan, he had moved out to Seattle, and I was living in western Montana, and so we would just drive over there just to, like, our kind of routine was a lot of times, if depending what was going on in Montana, we would just drive over on a Friday or a Thursday. We just get in the car and drive 9 hours to Seattle.
Wow.
Go out drinking. As soon as we got there, we'd go out drinking. Then we'd wake up super early the next morning and put his rowboat on top of his van and drive around or take a ferry out to the peninsula and fish flatfish and shuck oysters and dig clams.
Cool.
And then, and he'd come out to where we were and do whatever we were up to. And it was just on the list of shit to do was to go do some squid jigging. So I went out there for 20 days. And
just for fun?
No, just to write my story.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, and I squid jigged everywhere and talked to many people, and what's funny about that story is that at the time, like, squid jigging was more like you'd go down to the piers where they're catching squid, and the squid come up to spawn, and they come up around Thanksgiving, and then they're there till into the New Year, and then it dies off. But it was all like Cambodians, Laotians,
right.
Filipinos, Vietnamese, okay?
Yeah.
And then I write my story, and then years go by, over a decade goes by, and I quite unexpectedly moved to Seattle. And now I have young kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling my kids, man, we'll go down, you guys will dig this, we'll go down at dark and jig squid.
Yeah.
And we go down there, and it was like no time had passed. Like in hunting and fishing, like things always change, right?
Yep,
things always change. It's like everybody, like, there's more people doing something or less people doing something, or it's not as good as it was.
Yeah.
It was like nothing changed, man. Walk down to the pier, people down there, Cambodians, Laotians, Filipinos, Vietnamese, jigging squid, tackle was the same, methods were the same.
Well, were some of them the same people, you think?
I'm sure you could have found them. So then this last winter, me and my he was 6. Me and my 6-year-old, my 4-year-old just pounded it.
Yeah.
We hit it hard, man. We were eating so many squid.
Y'all were getting them, huh?
Yeah, it's fun, man.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, like one of those magazine stories that wound up becoming, after a long pause, it became relevant to your life again.
Right on. Well, wherever we go and seek out the people fishing. You know, like in Seattle, well, at the docks up there going out to Whidbey Island, they have this weird crab thing they throw out. It's
crab rings.
Crab rings,
Yeah.
and we went down and all those guys are speaking Spanish. You know, we sat there and talked to them about like the cangrejos, you know, and it's a universal brotherhood if you're catching stuff, you know, and they were having so much fun. And I guess you got to be kind of sober to do it because they weren't really drinking, you know, yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, everywhere we go, we do the same thing. New Orleans, you go down to the Moonwalk, and there's like the Laotian dude or anybody out there catfishing, you know.
Yeah.
You're like drawn like a magnet, you know.
Oh yeah, I can't stand it, man.
Stand it.
I know it kills me, man. That's like even on any kind of vacation with my wife. The minute she sees someone fishing, she's like, "Oh no,
oh no, he's gone." Yeah, it's a crazy thing. Moth to a flame, you know.
Yeah, that's a good way.
When we do it, I pull over in the river going up like to Havre, Montana. I always pull over at Loma, see who's there, you know, at the bridge, what they're catching, because it's always different, like what's coming up the river out of the Missouri.
Yeah.
And and even if I don't have time to fish it, you know, I'm going to walk down there to where the Teton River comes into the morass. I'm going to ask them what they're doing, you know. Yeah. And everybody's real friendly. It's like a easy way to meet people. Same way in Alabama.
Yeah.
It's like you drive to Scottsboro, you go across like 12 bridges, and every one of them's got somebody there that wants to talk to you about crappie fishing.
Exactly.
You know.
I just fished crappies for my first time in a long time. But you know what I was going to say about when I was thinking about that squid thing, I always remember when it was. It's anchored in my head because I was out there in December of 2001. And I had never lived in a large city before.
Right.
You know, I'd always lived in small towns. And it was December 2001, and there's so much. You got Boeing Field and SeaTac. And there's just still, now especially, just like a dizzying amount of aircraft all the time. I remember sitting down because when you're jigging in Seattle, you're like on the waterfront downtown.
Right.
And looking at all those skyscrapers and all those aircraft, man, just being so uneasy.
Yeah.
Feeling that one of those planes is going to burrow into one of those skyscrapers,
right,
man. So it's always like whenever I think about what year was that, I'm always like, oh, yeah, that's right. It was December 2001.
So when we were still watching overhead.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Dude,
sure.
every plane I'd be like, no. Okay,
yeah.
there it goes.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, that whole year was like that. We were building a semi-wilderness bridge back off the Bitterroots, off of Magruder Corridor, and we actually had heard about the attacks and all that stuff. And then these guys came in outfitted, and he had driven like 15 hours. He had been marooned like in Minneapolis.
Yep.
And rented a car and come clear. He was going elk hunting, even if the world was going to end.
That's how he was going to go out.
That's it. And he said, I can't tell you what's going to happen, but I can tell you what's going to happen over the next week.
Yeah. You know, a thing people don't really realize, like when they grounded all those aircraft, there's a lot of guys hunting, you know, because it's September, so people are out hunting moose. And
you bet.
There's a lot of guys that, you know, sat phones weren't nearly as prevalent then as they are now. There's guys that are waiting on airplane pickups.
It had no idea what
happened. You go some areas in Alaska, it's like really surprising how much aircraft noise there is.
Yeah.
And then people out in the bush waiting to get picked up.
Yeah.
And then one day there's like no planes flying. You got a guy scheduled, he doesn't show up.
Yeah.
Just get uneasy.
Right.
Get uneasy feeling, man.
Something bad's happening. Yeah. So when you started doing that, was that what was the first story? Was the squid story one of your first?
No, the first story I wrote, it's funny, we're sitting on, we're up here in Duluth, on the waters of Lake Superior, and the first story I wrote was about something we used to do when I was in, I went to college, well, I kind of bounced around different schools, like community college and a bunch of things. I went to 3 different schools before I graduated from college, and one of the schools I went to was Lake Superior State University in Michigan's UP. So this same lake, if you headed east, you'd wind up over there. And the St. Mary's Rapids is where Lake Superior falls roughly 20 feet into Lake Huron.
Okay.
So, am I messing that up? No, yeah. Falls into Lake Huron through the St. Mary's River. And they divert, there's a diversion there in town where they peel some water off of the St. Mary's and run it through a canal.
Okay.
And it powers a hydroelectric dam.
Okay.
And after that hydroelectric diversion goes to that hydroelectric power facility, it pours back into the St. Mary's River. And that thing has a kind of a silty bottom, that canal does.
Uh-huh.
And mayflies hatch in there. So all these mayflies will hatch up in that power canal, then the water flows through and turns the turbines and churns out into the river. And like the right time of year, all manner of fish show up.
I bet.
Just feeding on those mayflies coming out of there. And there was 40-some turbines. And we could never figure it out, but there's 2 of them that were really good for Great Lakes whitefish.
Okay.
If I remember right, it was like turbine number 27 or something like that. It was really good. No one could ever figure out why, just how much water was rushing through it. There was a couple turbines. They had peeled a couple turbines off and given them to the Lake State University, and they were trying at the time. Like the fucked up thing about the Great Lakes is that the native fisheries are, were so destroyed in the late 1800s, early 1900s. They just started treating them like an aquarium.
Yeah.
And anything that they could get going in there, they would get going in there. So
Flathead Lake in Montana, they did the same.
Yeah.
With the whitefish.
So in the Great Lakes, it was that the whitefish were on there, were a native fish, and sturgeon were a native fish. And as those fisheries collapsed for various reasons, over harvest and also rafting logs.
Right, I bet. Yeah.
Rafted logs in all the bays and inlets, and then they covered them and covered the bottom in 13 feet of bark.
Yeah.
So as a class, I was trying to introduce new fish. In the time I was there, they were trying to get Atlantic salmon going, and they would rear Atlantic salmon in this facility. They'd rear Atlantic salmon in this dam. Like turbines 1 and 2 were taken offline, and the university was doing work with Atlantic salmon, and they'd cut Atlantic salmon loose. And when those Atlantic salmon would come back to their natal stream, they would know
where they were. Yeah.
They would know what turbine to go to.
Gotcha.
So, like, turbine number 1, you kind of see how it works, because turbine number 1 would have all the Atlantic salmon in it. Turbine number 2 would have, like, a couple that were a little bit whacked out about where they were supposed to go. And turbine number 3 would have, like, 1. Uh-huh. And then none of those other turbines would get Atlantics in them.
Wow.
Steelhead would go up to them. We'd fish there. And the story is about how my buddies had developed this strategy, because it was very competitive to get the turbines, the right turbines. Old guys that get up at 5 in the morning and go out there. And
you're on like a concrete walk?
You're tying up. We'd get out of the bar at night.
Gotcha.
And my buddies developed this, and I did it with them a handful of times. I was writing about doing it. Is they'd get out of the bar at night, instead of going home, they'd just take their boat out and sleep in the turbine.
Gotcha.
Because they had these studs screwed up into the wall. We'd pull in, it'd be warm.
That you could tie off on?
You'd pull into the dam, and it's warm inside there.
Yeah.
And we'd just sleep in their sleeping bags.
Yeah.
And then once daybreak came, people go nosing up in there thinking they had the turbine. We'd be up in there sleeping.
Yeah.
And then we just back out of there and just catch fish.
And what were y'all fishing with them? What do you fish for?
You'd take we used to run we'd take a fly rod, and we used to use these reels all the time called Martin. Yeah. It was like a gear ratioed fly reel.
Okay.
A Martin multiplier.
Yeah. And
we'd run that amnesia shit on there.
Okay.
So you'd run like a Martin multiplier reel with backing, and then amnesia line, and like 8 feet of just descending leader.
Okay.
And we'd tie these little beadhead, just like little small beadhead nymphs, but we'd tip it with a waxworm.
Right.
And you'd put split shot on there, and you'd chuck that thing up into the turbine,
right,
so that it would have time to drop. Then you'd swing it down, and you'd hook these big ass whitefish. And the Great Lakes whitefish is nothing like a river whitefish.
Right, you bet. That's what's in. They're in Flathead too.
Yeah.
You know the limit was like 50 or something.
Yeah,
that was our big haul. Yeah, 8-pounders.
Yeah, big, beautiful. I mean, there's a commercial market for those fish. They're that good.
Yeah.
There's a commercial market for the caviar, and there's a commercial market for the fillets, mostly operated by Ojibwe and native fishermen in the Great Lakes. We'd catch big ones of those. Now and then steelhead.
Yeah.
And I just wrote a story about that. And it was kind of about Sault Ste. Marie and about like, just stuff like that. That was the first story I sold.
Gotcha. Who'd you do that for?
That was outside.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
All right, that's cool. They were doing fishing stuff then. If you could talk them into it.
Yep, and they let me do some hunting stuff. I did like full on hunting stories for outside.
Yeah.
And I had sold a story before that, but not really. Like I'd done a story for Trapper and Predator Caller magazine one time where you get a dozen traps. I remember you got like a dozen Northwoods
for your pay.
#1 double coil springs.
Wow.
And it was called School Days.
School Days.
And if you won, you had to send you like a little care package. And I got these a terrible trap. Like I never, it was like a #1 double coil spring Northwoods. It's just a shitty trap, but that's what you got.
Uh-huh. Where did you do that? Where did you trap?
Michigan, when I grew up.
Uh-huh.
We started trapping muskrats. When I was 10 years old, I got a half dozen #1 Victor long spring, single long springs.
I know that one, you bet.
And then my old man lent us $24. He lent me and my two brothers $24, and we bought a dozen 110 conibears, and we started trapping muskrats. Mm-hmm. And then I trapped till I was 22. I got very serious about it, very serious about it, and trapped till I was 22. Then I quit trapping when I went to grad school.
Was there money in it some?
I came in right at the tail end.
Yeah.
So the big fur boom was like, 78 to 82.
Yeah.
Everything was valuable. I mean, since then things come and go, right? Like that back then was like fur was just valuable, and then it started to taper off. But then things would peak up. Like now, like a couple years ago, for some weird, bizarre reason, like muskrats shot up, right? Like all fur sucked, but then muskrats were worth like a good large late season muskrat was $20, or like remember when bobcats were like
I knew a lot of people out there doing
900
that.
for if he had a belly that was like 3 fingers wide and very distinct black spots.
Right.
Like that bobcat would be worth $800, but a bobcat in Michigan would be worth $12 because they don't have a white belly. So you still have these like highs and lows. But when I started, it was just at the tail end of everything being valuable, and it was very competitive when I started. But I kept trapping all through the intervening very shitty years to where toward the end it was very hard to make money, but no one was trapping.
Right. Gotcha.
So you could get some good hauls because it didn't justify the chase, man.
Yeah, gotcha. Do you consider that like one of the best apprenticeships there is to learning the ways animals move? And
for a couple reasons, because you're out there every day. You wind up spending a ton of time in the outdoors, and you learn to read sign.
Right.
I still like it. Just it changed my head, and it changed just how I look at the ground.
Yeah.
And I don't have I'm not, I do good hunting. I just have a lot of experience, right? But there's a thing that one of my strong points, and I have a ton of weak points, but one of my strong points is I learn how to read sign, and I notice stuff that I wouldn't have noticed had I not spent so much time staring at the ground.
Right.
And when you're trapping and staring at the ground, I mean, a mink's track's the size of your pinky.
Right.
If you put the tip of your pinky in the mud.
Yeah.
So you learn to find that kind of shit and tail drag marks, and it's just it just trains you to look at the ground in a certain way. And then it trains you. It also trains you to be good at being uncomfortable, and being out there. And it was funny because I was also trapping right as the animal rights movement was starting to identify trapping as a problem. So I grew up around that too.
And what years is this?
That was really kind of coming, that was, like I said, I set my first trap in 1984. By the early 90s, I was still trapping. I think I trapped up till 96. And by the early 90s, there was becoming like a real cultural
I remember
debate.
You bet.
And and animal rights was kind of becoming a thing people knew about.
Right.
I didn't understand. I conflated animal rights with environmentalism. So we even had a group in high school called HATE. It was Hunters Against Teenage Environmentalists. And it was like dudes that like to hunt and trap. Yeah. Because we thought that environmentalists were animal rights people.
Right.
We didn't even know our terminology. You know what I mean? It was just completely out of the blue.
Yeah.
But we had T-shirts and everything. We were would do can drives for the needy and shit, and have parties, hate parties.
We're here from Hate.
Dude, it was funny. It was funny as shit.
That's awesome.
But I had no idea. We were just completely uneducated about anything surrounding. anything. And I remember, like, I always belonged to Michigan United Conservation Clubs.
Yeah.
No idea what that meant. All I knew, now I know, but all I knew then is if you wanted to sell fur at the Ravenna Fur Auction, you had to join Michigan Trappers Association.
Gotcha.
And Michigan Trappers Association was part of Michigan United Conservation Clubs, so you'd get, like, their newsletter in the mail. But no, I never made any kind of connection about all the things I did, all the, resources I exploited,
right.
and anything surrounding conservation, environmentalism,
Right.
And my first awareness of it was just like that the animal rights people were coming to get you.
Sure. You're under siege already. Yeah.
And it's funny because, like, I've become friends with an environmental historian named Randall Williams, and he introduced me to this term recently. I don't know if he coined it or picked it up somewhere, but it was about how hunters have a persecution complex.
Yeah.
Meaning, there's a very small minority of Americans that hunt.
Right.
There's a smaller minority of Americans that don't hunt. And in the middle is this vast world of people who are kind of indifferent to it.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. Don't think about it much at all.
Don't spend much time at all thinking about it. Yeah.
Right. And it's probably growing, by leaps and bounds.
Yeah, hunter approval ratings are higher now than they were in the time that I'm talking about.
Well, they are, because the dialogue has changed, and part of that's the locavore movement and the recognition that industrial meat production is really so flawed.
Yeah,
and that's changed it for me. Although we started out that way, shooting deer and quail and fishing for the pot,
Yeah.
We always knew that was what you wanted to eat if you could get it. If you could kill 3 whitetails, you're way ahead.
Yeah.
So my mother knew that, and talked about that, but that was before we started looking at the hog farms and what it really looks like. And
I never gave any thought. I never gave any thought to agriculture or anything. But yeah, it's like eating game. And as a kid and in high school, like, eating game was cooler than.
Yep.
It was just more fun.
Right.
But I got that from my old man. He was a social guy, and he liked to have wild game parties.
Uh-huh. We used to do those in Alabama. We'd do those dove hunts in September, which was a huge, like, party.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would clean doves for boxes of shells, and then we'd have them all out on those grills. I worked at a horse barn, and there was a huge amount of cornfields right in there, and so I got invited just because I was there.
Gotcha.
And I'd shoot a single shot 20. I wasn't killing a whole lot of them.
Yeah.
But it was a blast, and that was like the only real social kind of hunting that I've ever done. Again, when I go duck hunting, I don't want that. I want to go duck hunting more like by myself or with my son or my daughter. But that was a social occasion, and it works.
I had never had that experience till 2 years ago. We went down to Virginia and went on, like, a dove hunt where, like, a dude's got a field and he invites all of his people over.
And you set it up so you're kind of blocking.
It's real gentlemanly.
Yep.
Did that.
It was a blast.
It was fun, but yeah, I never. And a fucked up thing is that as a kid in Michigan, talk about animal rights shit. As a kid in Michigan doesn't have a dove season.
Uh-huh.
They went in. It's just like it got sold in as, like, bird apiece,
Right. Oh,
and this was not. It was not like a liberal state.
Right.
At the time, I mean, it was like a union state, but it wasn't
right.
like a socially liberal state at the time. But I don't know how it had come up and somehow got passed through the state where they made it, like, virtually impossible to undo it.
Right.
So as dove numbers started exploding, what they kill now, tens of millions of doves in this country every year.
Right.
There's hundreds of millions of doves in the U.S. and they kill tens of millions every year.
Yeah.
But not there.
Right.
So we'd see them. We'd go after them as little kids. We'd go after them with Crossman pellet guns on the power lines.
That's what we did too.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And got them.
Yeah, it was like,
yeah,
it's just like, it's funny your comprehension of the law and stuff when you're young.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we roamed at will.
Yeah, there's a lot to learn, man. There's a lot to learn.
There was a lot to learn. We roamed at will, and I've never really written this story, but I would run into this man, and he had like an old 22, and I knew him because I had caught a bunch of red horse.
Suckers?
Yeah. And we didn't really, my mother said, you got to pressure cook these, and we didn't cook them. And so I gave them to Fred. This guy's name was Fred Johnson. And I would run into Fred all over, and he was, I'm just looking for my dogs. They ran off. But he was just hunting everybody's property, you know.
Yep.
But it occurred
under the guise of trying to find his dogs.
Yeah, and it occurred to me later though that I was running into him like doing this. You know, I just didn't have the same excuse, right? And you're like,
I'm looking for your dogs too.
Yeah. If anybody sees them, let me know. You know.
So you guys had red horse suckers down there?
We did. They come out of probably the Flint River, but I used to think they come out all the way from the Tennessee. And this was North Alabama, outside of Huntsville, and they would run up the Flint, then up the Hurricane Creek, and then up Mulder Branch, which was really small. And Mulder is almost completely dry now due to like clean farming and stuff.
Yeah.
But and you could go down there. We did everything but shoot them with a 22, to snag them, to catch them. They would bite on the way up.
Yep.
You could catch them on worms. And they're the biggest thing going, you know, in that tiny creek. It's like, it's still, to me, high sport, big game, to me, to see those giant suckers come up that little creek.
Oh, yeah, man. Yeah.
And imagine, like, how far, like, I can remember waking up at night. I'd be like 12, 11, and think, like, where are they, you know? How far up, you know, when are they going to pass from, like, the Flint into the Hurricane where we can start seeing them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we always regarded them as a low-grade fish, but we would target them now and then.
Yeah.
But we had, because of what I was explaining about the Great Lakes, they, they had established cohos, kings, browns, steelhead.
Right.
So as far as the anadromous fish, those are the ones we were mostly interested in, but we would also target the suckers.
So think of how isolated you are, like at say 20 years old. Like, I never even heard of that stuff, and that's going on in Michigan, right?
Yeah.
And you're obsessed with the one place, like wherever you're at.
Yeah.
Is how you develop as a hunter and a fisherman too. And I was like, before I moved to Montana when I was 25, and went elk hunting as soon as I was legal, you know, and I got one. And I thought, well, you know, I got this wired. I'm a great hunter. Obviously, I didn't get another one for like 5 years.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
But I didn't know anything about elk. Nothing. I can't even really remember. The only Field and Stream thing I ever read was a pack trip in the Bob where they caught a bunch of cutthroats and ate them. And I thought, oh, that's, you know, I got to get on some of that someday.
Yeah.
But I never imagined that I would ever be there.
Yeah.
You know, you tend to just, like, if you're so focused on where you're at.
Yeah, it starts out like a small circle. I was fortunate to grow up on a lake, so at first I just knew what went on around my dock real well.
Right.
And then you expand outward, you know,
right.
and trap, and kind of, you know, pretty soon would trap in a bunch of different counties and hunt in different counties, and and you just your range expands out. In fact, that was like just watching the lake I grew up on was the first thing. Like a lot of guys, like my introduction to any kind of thinking about conservation, I didn't recognize it as such, but it was like the not in my backyard stuff.
Right.
Right. Like you kind of grew to be reliant on this handful of lakes that I grew up on. And then when something bad happened to those lakes, you'd get pissed.
Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So there was a thing when I was a kid, it was much more common to have reeds along your shoreline to leave some debris in the water. If a tree fell over, it wasn't like urgent to get it out. And then people discovered going to people over on Lake Michigan and buying beach sand, because there's always people just getting rid of beach sand.
Right, right.
Because it blows up.
Right.
People discovered that and started just hauling that shit in trucks and having it brought in.
And so they're making beaches for their property?
Yep. Where you just start every year, well, not every year, every couple of years. It became very fashionable.
Right.
And then it became, and when I was born, it was mostly like my home was like a summer home that my dad bought, right? And we just started living there, but it was like built as a summer property.
Yeah.
And it was all little cabins around our lake, built up away from the water, up in the trees.
Right.
And then people would buy those and tear those down and then build a big damn house as close to the water as they possibly could. Where now it looks like some of them look like they're coming up out of the water.
Yep. Yeah.
And you bring in beach sand, and then people, when people build when the water was low and the water tables come up. They're like, well, I can't have this.
Right.
So then they put in a thing to drain the lake levels down.
Uh-huh.
And the lakes were all connected by channels when I was
smokes.
The lakes were all connected by channels when I was born.
Yeah.
And they drain them down to where they're not connected. Mm-hmm. So there's no exchange going on between the lakes.
Wow.
So,
did y'all recognize that?
oh yeah, man. But like I said, it was just irritation. It was irritation about you didn't put it on any kind of national scale, and you didn't even look at it like that it had a name, but it'd just be like irritation about bad stuff happening in your area.
Right.
Later, when I realized it was later than I realized that these little things happen all over the place, and there's no running away from them.
Right.
You know.
And the cumulative effect is a degradation of all of it.
Yeah, and then you wind up being like, oh man, this is a thing.
Right. Right.
This is a thing. And but yeah, that was just like that very close watching of a spot.
It's the study. It's like I've talked about it a lot before. It's like it's the difference between being a visitor to somewhere and an inhabitant. You know, I mean, a visitor is as a hunter. If you're going to a new place, you know it's wonderful to see it with new eyes, but you don't know what that place looks like.
Yeah.
You don't. You have to have people that are inhabitants there to tell you. You know, like the Great Lakes. I mean, they're nothing like what they were pre-settlement days. Or
no.
It's a totally different thing. All of Montana too. All the different trout. You know, all of Alabama. Before the dams. You know, could you imagine what that was like?
Yeah.
You know, the Coosa River, you know, I don't know. I mean, I'm not even sure. I guess there's like those buffalo, you know, smallmouth buffalo and stuff like that. Like in those, the Native American weirs, you know, would have just been filled with, you know, whatever sturgeon.
Yeah.
You know.
Lots of sturgeon. I fished for those smallmouth buffalo, though, with boat, you know, archery tackle.
Yeah. We just caught
it's amazing.
one.
But I didn't even realize about the Great Lakes. It wasn't until I moved away from the Great Lakes that I started reading real heavily about what that place was like in the early 1800s.
Right.
And then it just makes you even sort of more aware of change.
Right.
The way in which we change things generally for the worst.
Generally for a diminution.
With some very notable exceptions.
Right.
Well, I should say this. I don't know. I shouldn't say generally for the worst because we've made a tremendous amount of progress in the last 100 years.
Well, we showed the world how to knock it out.
Yep, and then we showed them how to bring it back.
And then we showed them how to bring it back. I mean, it's the most unique thing I think we did a lot of successful things in this country, you know, but that's one of the most amazing things that you can look at and say, wow, look at that, nowhere else.
No,
you know, somebody was telling me, Brandon Butler was telling me that he went turkey hunting in the Yucatan. And the ocellated turkeys.
I've never done that.
There were lots of them. They had given them a break, and they were coming. You know, they'd come back.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what the world will do if you give it room. But as Randy Newberg told me one time, let's just face it, the conservation like that's not convenient. You know, those people want to lower those lakes.
Yeah.
And you've got to say, I don't know, it's going to mess it all up, and they're going to go, I don't really care.
That's the thing about that guy. The lowering of the lakes, one of the great ironies there is one of the biggest advocates for lowering those lakes was my childhood fishing mentor. Mm-hmm. I mean, my dad mainly taught me to fish, but John Gary down the beach was the most avid fisherman I knew. Mm-hmm. You know, he would write down every day he fished, and he would fish between 170 and 200 days a year.
Wow.
But his basement would get flooded.
Right.
The funny thing about him is, he had his own boat launch at his house, and he had a cement slab poured. The entire time I was growing up, that cement slab was underwater. Uh-huh. But at some point in time, there was a drought,
right?
And those lakes got low enough for someone to pour that cement slab, and it poured underwater, right?
Yeah.
And so I didn't put that together for a long time, but he just hated that lake coming up in his thing.
Right.
And then you realize that there's like this leap to make where he would have had to, if he'd have ever sat and said to himself, he's dead now, but if he said to himself, do I like fishing more or my dry basement more?
Right.
And really thought about it, right. I feel like even he would have said, you know, looking back on the span of my life, I guess I like fishing more than a dry basement.
Right.
But it just wasn't like one of those questions.
We never made that connection.
No, he wasn't. You know, he didn't ask that question.
And I know people don't, you know, and the problem with it is that we we tend to lower our expectations. When you come to a new place, you don't know how great it was before.
No.
There's a great thing in John McPhee. I think it's in Coming Into the Country.
I know that book well, yeah.
And they're catching those salmon, and they're cutting. They've got a moose and all this stuff. And he said, the guy says, we had all this bounty, you know. It's an unbelievable bounty. And he said, his wife said, well, you know, think this is the Arctic, which is actually fairly austere globally.
Yeah.
Imagine what New Jersey was like.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah. It's funny to think about that. The way our perception of like really robust environments now.
Right.
I mean, but you can't even begin to comprehend
Right.
the Eastern Seaboard.
Right.
The richness of the environment. We're facing it now, like that relativity where my brothers and I and a buddy of ours, we all own a place in southeast Alaska on an island, you know, and you got to fly in there to get there. We spend a lot of time up there fishing and also hunting. And when we came in, they had done a big clear cut not far from there, but they had finished the clear cut 10 years before we bought the place. We've had the place 12 years now. And most of the ground around there is Tongass National Forest.
Right.
So, which is, you know, the country's biggest national forest, and it's like a marine forest. So we all discovered paradise, right?
Yeah.
And got over the last decade a very solid sense of like what this place is supposed to be like.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're still allowing tribes up there to do native claim settlements, right? Where they're, you know, the Native Claim Settlement Act under the Carter administration.
Right, I remember that. Yeah.
So, one and you know, you have in the U.S. and the American West, people might be familiar with reservation system, but there they have tribal corporations,
Okay.
right? And up in southeast Alaska, a good way to tell if something's tribal corporation land is it's clear cut.
It's slicked off.
So, a good way to tell national forests is if you see some old growth, it's typically going to be because it's national forest.
Right.
If you see a clear cut, it's because it's native land.
Right.
And they just right by us did this gigantic transfer. It was part of it was like 9 blocks of land. This gigantic transfer of, you know, land handed over to a native corporation. So out of federal ownership and into a corporation, and they immediately. So now they're engaged in an 8-year-long old growth clear cut at our place.
Yeah.
And dude, it's just been it's been like emotionally devastating.
I bet.
And again, it's that like not in my backyard shit, right?
Right.
Because if I heard, like if I looked and was flying out to my place and saw some big clear cut elsewhere, I'd be like, oh, you know, it's 1,000-year-old trees, dude.
Right. They're slicking it off again.
Yeah, 1,000-year-old trees, man. That's kind of that's something that makes me think. But to see it in your own place, you're like, son of a bitch, you know.
Right,
You just like
right.
you perceive it way differently. And I try not to be selfish about that because you mentioned being a visitor and an inhabitant.
Right.
And I'm a professional visitor now.
Right.
But I think I learned, I like to think, that during the years that I wasn't a professional visitor, that I learned how to look at ground.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I learned to look at ground from a different perspective. So now just the way my life and career are, I visit all over, in some respects all over the world, and look at places that are in stasis or in change.
Right.
And and it's really affected me, you know, to see that. And I think that recovery, and we've done a ton of recovery happens slow and destruction happens fast.
Correct. Right.
So it's easy to get brought down. It's easy to be made depressed because like destruction come about so quickly.
Right. And in your next decade or maybe your lifetime, you won't see that recovery in total, you know.
Yeah.
Have you ever read Dirt, The Erosion of Civilizations?
No.
I can't remember the author, but that's a highly recommended book to throw in your pack. And it's not hard to read. And he starts out like in Syria before all the turmoil.
Yeah.
But it's just like, and there's places like in England where there's fence posts that are 4 feet. The dirt used to be 4 feet higher, you know.
Oh, I got
Yeah,
you.
and then you can like grade when they had the sheep boom in Scotland, and the erosion started from that grazing.
Got you.
So it's a history of the erosion of civilization told through the loss of topsoil, you know.
Yeah.
And in that case, I mean, you'll never see that again. But if you go to those places in Scotland, they're nevertheless beautiful.
Yeah.
They're still beautiful, you know, by the visitor standard.
Exactly. We don't have that deep perspective on it.
You don't, and
Yeah.
probably it's lucky that we don't. You know.
I don't know that you'd be able to live. I mean, if you somehow granted me a glimpse of even where I like to walk, I grew up not far from where the White River flowed into like a sort of freshwater estuary on its way out into Lake Michigan.
Yeah.
Between that river and the Muskegon River. And I think that if you had somehow given me a time machine glimpse of what that looked like in the mid 1700s, and then I had to go live in it in 1980 when I perceived it as a paradise,
right,
I probably would have been suicidal at the loss.
Right, yeah.
But instead I thought I was born into the greatest thing.
Sure.
And then that starts the clock, and from there it counts down.
Yeah, right. That's right. And also I really honestly believe deeply in bringing a fresh eye to a thing and loving it.
Yeah.
And without worrying about what the baseline was, or like Aldo Leopold said, to have an ecological awareness is to live in a world of wounds.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember quoting that one time, and then I wrote,
Man,
but
that's
frankly, to hell with that.
Oh, really? That's good.
I don't want to live in a world of wounds. I want to go catch some fish.
Yeah, we've kicked around selling our place and looking and scouting out a new location.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother was like, "Well, who's going to buy this place now?" I'm like, "Because to anyone else, it would still be paradise."
Yep. Right. Yeah, I was down in the Everglades on the St. Lucie River on that side. And one of the reasons there hasn't been an uproar of the water pollution coming out of Okeechobee, into the St. Lucie, is because so many people live there only in the winter. And I looked at those houses, these huge, multi-million-dollar properties, and I said, these people are not going to put up with this, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is they don't. In the winter, the water's clear.
Gotcha.
And so the constituency for absolute outrage, and there's plenty of it, is made up of locals who love that place so much that they tell you stories about the seagrass beds and wading, and their eyes just light up, and they're just like they're emphatic, in their love of this place. It's amazing. But they're the ones that are doing the fight.
Yep.
I think it's possible to be an inhabitant, to travel widely and look at things and still be an inhabitant of this planet, an aware person, especially for me, hunting gives me kind of a visitor's pass, an immediate pass into inhabitant status, because you're studying, you're there, you're serious.
It demands a level of attention.
Level of attention. We used to talk about it as an apprenticeship to a landscape. And you can do that in a lot of different places,
Yeah, that's a good perspective. I bet, all the gloom and doom, man, it's kind of, there's things that contradict it, too, because even talking about how recovery is slow, like, as we sit here right now, just yesterday came out the, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service moving to delist grizzlies. So there you have, they were listed originally right around when I was born.
You bet.
And then
there were so few, man.
Yeah,
at the garbage pile outside of Yellowstone.
Yeah, it had 100 of them or whatever, right?
Yep.
So to see that grow into a population of what anyone except 700,
right?
And a lot of people are, a lot of people who are looking most closely at it are at the opinion that that's the minimum.
You bet.
So yeah, man, good things happen.
I remember,
turkeys.
Yeah, there were no turkeys.
My dad. When I left Michigan, my dad started hunting turkeys, and I couldn't believe that it was true.
Yep. And where I grew up in Alabama, the turkeys they're everywhere now, and that was a small part of South Alabama. And this is in the mountains. It's a totally different kind of hunting. And
have you read Colonel Tom Kelly's 10th Legion?
No, I don't know about that.
Really? You don't know that book?
No.
No, it's about a guy hunting turkeys in Alabama, and there weren't any turkeys.
Cool. Yeah, no, I'll have to look that up.
He's hilarious,
for sure.
man. But it's it's like he kind of follows. It's sort of about the turkey disciples during the years one. He even says there shouldn't have been a turkey season.
Yeah, right.
I used to think that because at the time of European contact, there was turkeys in 39 states. Then it got down to being where there's only turkeys in 19 states.
Right.
And you see various numbers. And I think it's a lot of biologists are reluctant to even quote numbers, but there might have been as few as a couple 100,000 turkeys left. Mm-hmm. And most states didn't have a turkey. I used to think no states had a legal turkey season, but it turns out a couple states always maintained some sort of turkey season.
Right.
Now, Wisconsin will kill 50,000 turkeys in the spring, man.
See there. Yeah.
And they had none.
Right.
And
think of the engagement of people in that landscape. like you talk about building a constituency for conservation, or building just a constituency for love in a place.
Yeah.
Or you got 50,000 people that weren't there, had no connection to that other than some whitetail hunting, you know.
Yeah.
And now they're out there in the spring, right, checking it out,
picking morels and hunting turkeys,
morels
man.
and hunting turkeys and going on the drift in the big hardwoods, you know. And yeah, I just see it as a overwhelmingly positive. You know, I mean, I do see this thing you're talking about where the hunting is more accepted, you know.
Yeah.
I just see it as overwhelmingly positive that people interact with the world in this way. And I fully admit my bias. You know, I've been hunting since I was probably alone since I was 9.
Yeah.
And it's been it's still one of our main things. My daughter hunts, my son hunts, we hunt, you know. One of the things I was going to talk to you about too is one of the reasons that we hunt so much is to get meat. So I was teaching my daughter the other day to rock climb, right, to run the ropes and do all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I was obsessed with that for a long time. And I realized the reason that I moved away from it was because when I had the kids, we needed the meat. And so hunting is both this like incredibly intricate endeavor that also provides you with sustenance.
Tangible goods.
Whereas like rock climbing and all that stuff is wonderful stuff, right? And provides you with great experiences. But there is no tangible goods at the end.
Yeah, that's
of
what I always
off.
joke, man. It's like, I'll climb that mountain, but the damn sure better be a goat.
Got to be
there.
something up there, man. Yeah.
There's a guy I work with, a camera guy I work with, and we just rag on him nonstop because he's a climber. You know, we got him all set up with a rifle and everything, and it was like November, or October, November, like prime hunting time, and he's out doing some kind of ice climbing. But he says, well, I did run into a hunter. Yeah. And I'm like, how you could do that?
Right.
Like, how you could be so juvenile.
Yeah. Well, when I first moved to Montana, the cross-reference between the climbing community and the hunting community was real extensive. It was like, outdoor athletes of all sort, and they all hunted. Mm-hmm. And that changed just even over like 10 or 12 years where the two communities separated.
Is that right?
Yep, yeah. It did. There was an old school kind of person who did it all. You know, they skied in the winter, they hunted in the fall. They fished less. There was less of that cross, but the climbers and mountaineers all hunted in the fall.
Yeah.
And then that deviated somewhere. And I never left it, you know. I always saw it all as the same thing.
Yeah, well, my brother, Danny, he lives up in Alaska, and he introduced a lot of, I shouldn't say, I don't mean like he like single-handedly, but was definitely like involved in introducing a lot of climbers and folks that he now hunts with who were very serious, very accomplished outdoorsmen.
Right.
For those guys, it's a piece of cake.
Right.
To get into hunting.
Yep.
Because they already understand how to travel.
Right.
They know how to be outside. They know how to travel outside. Yeah. They know how to anticipate. They know how to problem solve.
Right.
They know how to plan.
Right.
You know.
And not like be all frozen.
Yeah, and that's the thing that trips people up is there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people like want to start hunting, but they can't imagine. They're just incapable of researching something and figuring it out and making a plan and getting on the phone and find out what's going on.
Right.
And like those guys that are doing those kind of like crazy wilderness travel, it's just like an added element,
right?
And they excel at it, from what I've seen.
Right,
you know, they excel at it.
Yeah, there's a serious outdoor athlete component in hunting in Montana right now, which is in Idaho. I'm sure everywhere else too.
Yeah.
But it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I mean it's a positive development, and it's I still don't see them in our country. You know, everybody still got horses where we are.
Yeah.
But you'll see people packing further. I've packed like 6 elk in my life on your back. Yeah. And I'm probably going for horses every time I can.
No, it can seriously damage you. Yeah. You know, carrying elk or carrying moose I know just from personal experience of people I was with that you can damage yourself doing it. And there's this thing now, and I've had a couple of friends point out to me now, like this thing like bragging up how many pounds you carry, and I'm guilty of it too, right?
Sure.
So I'll do it, and I'll give kudos to someone for doing it, but it's stupid.
Right.
You can damage yourself.
It's that thing where you're crawling, you get the pack on, and then you crawl around on the ground to get to your feet. Yeah,
exactly.
for sure.
Having two guys lift your pack up so you can put it on and shit like that.
Yeah.
But yet, no, there's people, there's like people coming in, like you said, like just, Wisconsin all of a sudden being, as in many places in the Midwest, being that there were no turkeys. Now there's a great turkey population. It brings people out in the woods. I just think the challenge is getting, is approaching those people who might be like coming into hunting and just get them to really stop and think about like what, to what degree do they value this?
Right.
Right. Because it's great to see people get engaged, and there's a lot of good things that come out of it. But I think one of the best things that can come out of it is just like, is that not, that landscape awareness that you want to defend your own place, but also when you turn it nationally, right? Mm-hmm. And you figure an attack on anyone is attack on everyone.
Right.
The gun community does it really well, man.
Right.
Like if someone's looking to, greatly abridge gun rights somewhere or reduce gun rights somewhere, you'll get advocates from all across the country.
Yep. About 4 million of them.
Right?
Yeah.
They get mobilized.
Yep.
But it seems that hunters and fishermen will sit and watch. They might not take it personally that some dude down in Florida is having his fishery destroyed.
Right.
Like a guy, some guy in Alabama or farther away in California might not make that connection.
Right.
That this is all part of a larger thing that needs to be looked at.
Right. We've let it. My old civics teacher, who was really instrumental in getting me into hunting. I was like 13. I didn't have a deer rifle, and he gave me a Marlin 44, just like a loner. Mm-hmm. And I shot a deer with it, and he wanted access to hunt our place too. Oh, okay. So he had some incentive, but he's remained my friend all these years. He's in his 70s, and he told me one time, he said, I read your stuff, and he said I really agree with so much of this guy's. He was pretty far out in the country, they're old school North Alabama guys, and he said for many years I would not have trusted it because I wouldn't have trusted the messenger. I would have considered that this was a watermelon talking to me. You ever heard that?
No.
And I said, what in the world is that? And he said, green on the outside, red on the inside.
Oh, yeah.
And I said,
I never heard that term.
I said, it blew my mind, given the fact that, like, the commies, the Reds, committed more environmental atrocities than anybody on earth. You know what I mean? It just didn't add up. But for him,
I've heard variations on that, man. It's convenient for people. It's convenient for the enemies of conservation to sort of like live in a world where that's a reality.
Right.
They like the idea.
But it works, I think. That's what I'm afraid. I'm afraid it works.
No, they kind of love that idea.
Yeah, that anybody that thinks about that's an idiot. It's like it's a limp-wristed idiot, probably a socialist to boot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
I think that's going away.
Oh, it's such a ridiculous, cheap notion, man. I very much associate. I mean, I associate conservation with a lot of things, but one of the things first and foremost is a form of deep felt patriotism.
Yeah, man, that's me too, man.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I'm the original cannon fodder, and while I'm running at those cannons, I'm thinking about like deer and turkeys and clean water and tumbling waterfalls.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of patience for that sort of thinking.
Yeah, I think also it's a country. How would you put it? It's a landscape ethic to match the dreams of the original vision. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm sure Roosevelt said it a lot better, but like it's a vision of landscape and to match the dreams that we had when we started this thing. And I still think it's possible, and I think we've done it, and we the litany as an environmental writer or reporter, the litany of destruction, the litany of disaster thing, it hammers people down. People can't take it anymore. They go, it's all polluted. Yeah. Instead of like going like up here, I crossed that Kettle River driving up here. Yeah. And I was just like, man, that thing is bad ass, man.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
And it's got all these riffles. It's like obvious. Like, I mean, I was just looking at it as just like I got to get there.
It's readable water.
It's readable water to the max.
Do you? Is that how you sort of define yourself? Like, what do you say when you say you're a writer?
I would
do you say conservation writer? Or?
I'm a conservation writer. I cover any. I write guns and stuff. I guess lately people have been saying I was an outdoor writer. But I do other stuff
the Outdoor
too.
Writers of America.
Yeah, there you go. But I cover a lot of stuff. But my primary passion, the thing that I can direct to, is probably environment and conservation, because it echoes out into everything else. I set out to be a war correspondent, and I looked at that for a long time as like a height, and then I was watching Afghanistan and the friends of mine who had been war correspondents, and they didn't like make a living at it, and I had a family, and I realized that all of the wars are launched based on natural resources. Somebody wants something somebody else has.
Yeah, so, I think that there's like a pretty cogent argument.
Yeah. And so I wanted to, from the beginning, I'm not interested in reporting on the smoke. I'm interested in where is the fire.
Yeah.
And so much of this is where is the fire, what is happening to the Great Lakes, why is this happening, and then it's an ecological approach to trying to understand reality.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's a good way of putting it.
So that's kind of what I've come to, and I do a lot of other stuff. I mean, I like gun writing, but I would never do it full time. It's like if I have, like I shoot a 45 a lot, so I'll do that. Or if I have, there's laws out there that are interesting to me, and I'll investigate stuff like that. But it's what gets me up is the same thing that got me up when I was 9 years old, which is to go fishing or hunting and look at the world, the natural world, and see what's going on,
Yeah.
And not necessarily, unfortunately, that involves the human being's relationship to that and how they're treating it and doing it, and what the repercussions of that are.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you, if you had been to what is the most intact place that you've hunted or gone to?
The most intact?
Yeah, like ecologically intact. Like what's the most remote or most ecologically intact place that y'all have been to?
Well, in North America, it would be the Brooks Range, by far. Mm-hmm. I was fortunate one time to go out to a place that's, if you look at it like in a numbers way, it's the most remote place in North America as far as like distance from roads, right? Which is in the Western Brooks Range. But by a large measure, like the most environmentally or ecologically intact place I've been is in Guyana, central Guyana, because there you have, that country's 90% virgin rainforest,
right?
And then 90% of the population lives on the coast,
right? At Georgetown.
Yeah.
Did you hunt there?
Yeah, I hunted with the Amerindians a little bit, and I've been down there twice. And
what do you hunt for?
Well, they hunt with their bows, so they bow fish a lot.
Gotcha.
And they hunt an aquatic rodent. It's interesting because they hunt a lot less stuff than, like, I was also in Bolivia and another area in the headwaters of the Amazon, and they would hunt like a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
But the guys I've hung out with a couple of times in Guyana, as far as mammals go, they don't hunt a whole lot of mammals. They like deer, but don't target them very aggressively. Red brocket deer. They like white-lipped peccaries, but they hunt them very opportunistically. And what they do go hard on is a nocturnal aquatic rodent called laba or paca.
Like a paca, yeah.
They like those a lot, but they eat a lot of fish, so they bow fish.
Gotcha.
They fish with hand lines, but they bow fish a lot.
Wow.
And then they hunt a variety of birds. So they hunt black curassow, cressus curassow. They hunt some guans, and these are all kind of lumped under a category of like edible birds. You know the way Americans will use grouse?
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Like old timers and shit would just be like any bird is like of suitable size for consumption is a grouse.
Or in the South, it was a partridge.
Yeah.
Quail, everything.
In Michigan, we had that word too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, these things are all sort of lumped into, I mean, they definitely know the difference, but they're lumped into some terminology
Right.
here. It just means like edible bird.
Right.
And they like to hunt those with their bows.
Yeah. Are they incredibly good with them?
Yeah, I mean, they're good compared to if you picked up the same tackle and tried to use it.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
very good. And from that degree, because they make all their stuff from native materials. It's hard to learn how to use that stuff.
I bet.
So it's really good. But no, I mean, if you went down there, if you had just a recurve and some fiberglass arrows, you'd smoke those guys, right?
Right,
I mean,
right.
even if you just shot once a week.
Just the tackle is better.
But yeah, because the stuff's so much better.
Right.
But when it comes to bow fishing, like the better equipment doesn't do you that much good.
Right.
So I've bow fished down there with regular bow fishing gear. It doesn't do you that much good, and they're like, at bow fishing, extremely good.
Yeah.
And also just like just their awareness of what's going on, their understanding of plants, trees, flora, the flora and fauna is pretty mind-boggling. But yeah, it's like, everything's there. So there's nothing gone.
Right. Right.
So they have like anything. If you went and looked at a list of native species, you'd have a very reasonable chance that you're gonna find the tracks or see the animals. It's not like our discussions here about the lake here and what's not here and what is here now.
Right.
But there's a lot of places in the north, in the Northern Rockies. You have, we came close to losing a lot of shit, but in the Northern Rockies, you could still say that it's all there.
Yeah, for sure.
It's all still there.
Right.
It's not there in the way it was.
Right.
But we're either really lucky or are very skilled in picking our times, because we sure came close to losing a lot of shit, but didn't like really lose anything.
Right. And whipped it back around.
Yeah. In Alaska, it hasn't lost anything yet.
Right.
I've talked about this with a couple people, but my brother had an interesting observation. He's an ecologist and works in Alaska. And, we were talking about kind of like the difference between the work he does as an ecologist there, which what you might down here. And he said that, he pointed out to me that we're not engaged in recovery.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
We're engaged. We're still engaged in describing the resources. Right. He's looking at. He goes and looks at salmon runs that have never been like actually described in any detail.
Well.
So they're not kind of going like, how can we get it back?
Right.
They're kind of going like, what do we have?
Right.
What things do we need to hang on to it?
Yeah.
It's a very different situation than all the things we've been discussing here about loss and recovery.
I know I was years ago, I went up and for the pebble mines when I first started, and I was able to fish the Mulchatna and the Cockatoolie. Mm-hmm. And that's how I felt there. I was like, this place it's vibrating at a different frequency than any place I've ever been. That's why I'm interested in that Guyana stuff, just because I was thinking of places that you could experience that.
Yeah,
it's here now. Now it's here. When I was a kid, I bought a cut rate plane ticket to Beijing, Brazil, and the stop off was in Paramaribo, Suriname.
Okay.
And getting in the airport's a long way from town, and getting in that taxi to go. I was only 18, to go to Paramaribo through that jungle. And the Amerindian Reserve is there, and they're all out on the road, of course. The cars like madly rushing through them.
Yeah.
But I was like going, this is I gotta get back here at some point. I never have.
If it wasn't, I'd spend a lot more time down there if I didn't have young kids.
Yeah.
And if it just wasn't so unbelievably uncomfortable. Because I'm a northern tier creature.
You bet.
Right? I've lived my whole life in northern tier states.
Yep.
And it's just really hard to get used to it. It's really hard to get used to it.
Well, it's like, I go back to Alabama, and we got a pump house right at the garden. And if you open that door in that pump house, there's 40 red wash nests, Yeah. And that's not in Montana.
Yeah.
So you have to recalibrate your stinging insect thing, and in the jungle it's 20 times that.
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember trying to do chin-ups one time when I had this job down there, and I was feeling out of shape, and I leaped up and grabbed this limb, and I was just stung by whatever those ants are that travel everywhere.
Yeah.
And they were all over me, man. They took incredible offense, and nobody that lived in that town, it was called Abatatuba, They would never do that.
Yeah. No, they examine everything.
Yeah, they're never going to jump up and grab a limb, and be like.
No, they examine everywhere their foot goes, everywhere their hand goes. I'd like to not yet, but it's going to be kind of important to me. I'd like to expose my kids to some of that stuff down there, just like that level of, expose them to that kind of danger and expose them to that kind of thing where all your decisions have very immediate results in the outdoors,
And the heat, it was never a problem for me. It was just like the ambience, the amount of like stinging insects, and the fact that you couldn't ever leave anything out.
Mm-hmm. The heat bugs me.
The heat got you.
Yeah, it does. And then in Bolivia, like the food, just sort of the kind of like eating rotten food all the time.
Right. You never feel good.
No.
That's what happened to me.
Very like limited having kind of like limited diet. It's a lot, man. It's a lot. But it's those experiences, those handful of experiences down there really have shaped how I look at my own place, for sure. Yeah. And again, just that intact, like a pristine ecosystem. To be somewhere where there is no saying like, man, you should have seen it yesterday.
Right.
You're like, to actually go look at some places like that is really stunning. Yeah. And then other places, almost just absurdly transformed to go spend time in like the quote unquote wilderness of New Zealand, which is an artificial landscape.
Right, for sure.
Places in Hawaii, which is like an artificial landscape.
Yeah.
Even to the Seychelles, where on land, you're looking at a very pristine marine environment, but on land you're looking at a creation.
Right. It's been hammered by mariners since we first
introductions.
Yeah.
Introductions where nothing is
right.
You if you had a passive understanding of landscape, you'd be like, holy cow, this place is like so pristine. And somebody would be like, yeah, go find me a pristine tree.
Right.
These are all brought in trees.
Well, I'd love to. I know we've got to probably wind out tonight, but someday I'd love to talk about that because of New Zealand is just the most extreme case, but like of what is native, and in a world where things are trading all the time, they're trading back and forth in this world, and I'm very interested in that idea because I don't think you can there is no fixed point.
No.
You don't go pre-Captain Cook on New Zealand, but there are value to retain in native species without a doubt. So it's a great argument.
Yeah, I spent a ton of time thinking about it, man, and I think that like religious people kind of criticize sort of like moral relativism in culture, right? Where they're like, well, they're reluctant to settle on this idea that we're going to give up like a fixed morality,
right?
And in the way when it comes to ecology and stuff, I think that you can play games and start in on like a relativism of what a pristine environment looks like. And it's like the argument used by people who advocate on behalf of wild horses at the expense of desert bighorns and American pronghorn, where they're like, oh yeah, but horses evolved here.
Right.
It's just that they were extinct for 12,000 years, and then were reintroduced by the Spanish, so they're kind of like a native animal. I just read a whole book that was like dedicated to this idea.
You bet.
The horses are like this native animal.
I've seen a documentary the same.
Yeah. And that in that that kind of shit makes me really uneasy. And it is difficult to establish benchmarks. Like when I said with my brother in working on fisheries in Alaska, where they're in like a descriptive phase still, like what is here,
right?
Not like how can we get it back, but what do we have,
right?
I think that even in that case, like there's been a ton of manipulation, but I don't buy this idea that we can't define what we're after. And I think there's a lot of people who cloud the water, like the horse thing, or I just was reading a book too where a bunch of thinkers and forward-thinking ecologists were like, well, if we're going to draw the line here, we should draw it before the Pleistocene-Holocene extinctions. Right. And that the goal here would be to get an elephant on the ground.
Right, the giant sloth.
Yeah,
back to Montana.
Yeah, but I kind of look at it like, I do value native wildlife.
Right.
above, non-native wildlife, and I hunt turkeys in states like, I said at the time of European contact, turkeys in 39 states.
Right.
We got turkeys. We got hunting seasons in 49 states now. I hunt turkeys in those states that did not have turkeys more than I hunt turkeys in the states that did have turkeys.
Right.
So, and I hunt wild pigs.
Yep.
But I do still value native wildlife above, and I kind of tend to, when I draw like what's the benchmark, I tend to think of around the time of European contact.
Right, sure.
Just like everyone arrives with their own, but I kind of tend
right.
to think of like, what should we be looking, where possible,
Right.
what should our idea of real recovery look like?
Right.
Would be, it'll never happen. It won't happen anywhere. But like when I imagine like, where should we start the conversation?
Right.
I tend to move toward that direction.
Sure.
Though but it's not realistic because, we got a million elk.
Right.
Right. We got a million elk. But we've only recovered elk about 90. I think it's like we're missing elk on 94% of native habitat.
Right. Right.
So it's also like, where is it plausible?
Right.
Where could it really happen? We've recovered grizzlies on, a few better than elk, but a few percentage places. But then you kind of got to look like where else is it really possible to do it? And when you think about where is it really possible to do it, the map gets pretty small.
It does. And we live with grizz, and for us, there's just that social tolerance, right? And for me, it's real high. I like them,
I enjoy them, man.
I was way down the river, way out on the prairie, fishing one night, and I had this ancient pit bull who never really left my side. She was too old and one eye, and she wasn't there. And I was looking around, and I was like, where's that dog? And she came walking down the bank, and there was two what I thought were pigs on either side of her, because this is way out on the prairie.
Yeah.
And I looked, and it was two grizz, like just past cub stage, and they were like messing with that dog. They had found this.
Oh, really?
They had found this like object of entertainment.
Yeah.
And when I hollered at them, one of them stood up and like they were completely discombobulated, and they took off across the river. And then on the other side, they started frimming around like dogs, and one of them tackled the other one.
Really?
It was a game it was like this wild game they were playing and stuff. And to see those things, I never thought they were down there, like,
venturing that far out on the open.
Way down, yeah.
Yeah, I have super high tolerance, but I'm comfortable around animals, and I'm not a livestock producer.
Right.
So,
well, the same, I guess it was a year before that, a couple of those guys, the young on Walkabout grizz, they killed 53 sheep in one sitting up on the Teton River there, and they were like throwing them. They were eating their udders to get the milk.
Oh, yeah.
And then tossing them.
Yeah.
And those bears have never been seen again. One of them, they snared one of them, and the bear guy had a tranquilizer shot that was for an adult bear, and he couldn't use it, so he had to go mix up another one. And that bear got loose of that snare, and nobody's ever seen him again.
Really?
They
don't know if he's alive or dead. They didn't get
they were alive. Yeah.
Oh,
they just left.
Yeah.
He pulled the snare out, and then just left.
Oh.
So those two bears are probably in the mountains.
Well, yeah. Hopefully they didn't identify that as like the best food source.
The best party in Shoto, Montana.
They need to think like that was fun, but I'm not gonna do it
again. That snare was no good.
That's the key. That's the key for those things to stay alive, man.
Yeah. Well, Steve, let's pick this up again, man.
I would love to.
This has been a good time.
Yeah. No, anytime, man. Anytime.
I'll see you here tomorrow, and then if you get up in our part of the country, come drift by.
I'm afraid when I give my talk tomorrow, I feel like I might have just used up some of my material.
Yeah, you'll refill the well tonight. See you, man.
Thank you.
This is Backcountry Hunters and Anglers podcast. We'll sign off for the night.